Welcome back to America Decides. Voters of Virginia are 7 months away from electing their next governor, but fundraising in this election already shattering records. Let me describe how. Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is the Republican nominee. Her campaign says it has raised more than $3.1 million in the first 3 months of 2025. That's more than any Republican gubernatorial candidate in Commonwealth history for that reporting period. The Democratic candidate, Abigail Spanberger's campaign, raked in $6.7 million in that same time frame. That's the highest amount ever raised by a statewide Virginia candidate in the first quarter of an election year. Abigail Spanberger joins me now. She formerly served as Congresswoman for Virginia's 7th Congressional District from 2019 to 2025. So I want to ask you a couple of questions about where the race is, what these fundraising numbers tell you, and how important or non-important it is that whatever the outcome, the Commonwealth is going to have its first female governor.
Well, it's an exciting time here in the Commonwealth. Certainly our race is heating up. It's an exciting time because voters across Virginia know the stakes of this election. Voters across Virginia know that the choice is a clear one between a governor who will stand up for Virginians and Virginia's economy, particularly under these unprecedented attacks on the federal workforce. 320,000 Virginians are federal employees. Our larger economy, certainly the impacts of those firings ripple across communities across our Commonwealth. And with the impacts of tariffs, increased antagonistic trade wars, all of this impacts Virginia, and the stakes of this election reflect that. But importantly, Virginians also want a governor who's focused on the things that matter most to them, kind of even apart from and aside from this time of chaos. That includes putting us on path towards having the best public schools in the whole country. That means facing the reality that costs are such a challenge for families, and we have to address the housing crisis by increasing demand. We have to work to lower the cost, certainly in the grocery store where possible, but importantly in the healthcare space. And we need a governor who's focused on keeping our community safe and addressing the challenges and the real concerns of people across our Commonwealth. Those are the stakes of this election. That's why so many Virginians are engaging so aggressively with volunteerism, with support to our campaign. And that's why I know we're going to win in November 2025.
So your opponent, Republican Winsome Earl Sears, went on social media this weekend after securing the GOP nomination and say electing you would be like electing an arsonist to put out a fire, accusing you of wrongly voting for President Biden's agenda on COVID relief, the infrastructure bill, Build Back Better, accusing you of contributing to inflation in the Commonwealth. How do you respond?
I think it's a particularly ridiculous assertion, given that my opponent has been eager to claim credit for some of the funding that certainly came through from those federal dollars to Virginia's Commonwealth under our current governor's administration. But the reality is that my opponent is endeavoring to distract because she's not talking about the fact that we have seen an absolute tanking of the stock market because of Donald Trump's actions. She's not talking about the fact that the University of Virginia stated that we should anticipate a reduction in $6 billion in economic output here in the Commonwealth of Virginia if we see 10% of our federal workforce potentially lose their jobs. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that farmers and producers across Virginia who have historically sold what they raise to Canada are terrified and worried about what's coming. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that a Virginian who needs to go buy a car, used or new, may no longer be able to afford that expense. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that currently our recovery rates in math for Virginia students post-COVID are 51st after every single state and the District of Columbia. And she doesn't want to talk about the things that they haven't done. So I'll put my record of getting things done for Virginians, getting legislation passed, including bills signed into law by President Trump in his first term and bills signed into law by President Biden. And I'm proud of the work that I have done of bills that were responsive not only to the moment, but to the needs of Virginians. That's the record that I am running on. That's the record of effectiveness I want to bring to the Commonwealth as governor. That's how I'm campaigning, to make sure that people know what I have done for them as a federal legislator and what I will do as governor.
I want to ask you about something the Trump Department of Justice announced last night. It repealed a Biden-era gun policy that revoked licenses from federally licensed gun dealers if they intentionally sold weapons without running background checks or falsified records. How do you react to that?
It's outrageous. Let me just make sure your viewers heard what you said, right? If someone falsified records, so lying on federal forms, or if they didn't, a federally licensed point of sale, if they didn't do what is legally required of them, which is to run a background check, that those individuals, that those gun shops would still be able to continue operating. It's outrageous. The Trump administration is saying that if you want to break the law as a purveyor of firearms, that is totally okay. And here's a place where responsible gun owners and, frankly, responsible gun shop owners should be screaming from the rafters, because this is just setting us up for potential challenges, potential issues, potential danger. We know that the vast majority, frankly, of those federally licensed gun shops abide the law, are careful, recognizing that the tools they are selling can do great damage in the wrong hands, and want themselves to be able to run those background checks, to know that they're not selling a gun to a potential terrorist or someone with a long history of domestic violence, someone who will do harm to themselves potentially if they're in point of crisis, to a law enforcement officer who's responding to a 911 call, or importantly to their domestic partner. As so frequently we have seen is the case when folks who are not supposed to have access to firearms, those are frequently their victims. So the idea that the Trump administration would make this choice, it makes our communities less safe. It makes our law enforcement less safe, because when a prohibited buyer, someone who is legally prohibited from being able to obtain and purchase a firearm, is able to get one, that puts the police officer, the state police officer, the sheriff's deputy, whoever is responding to a potential call, that puts them in danger when someone who is a prohibited buyer is able to buy a firearm. It is just outrageous.
Abigail Spanberger, Democratic nominee for governor of Virginia, thank you very much.